In today's video, we are going to be checking out the brand new Chicago Stinger Generation 2 Buzz Mute. What's going on, everyone? My name is Josh Rzepka, and today is Mute Monday. If you're new around here, Mute Monday is a weekly series where I discuss and demonstrate different trumpet mutes. Today, I am very excited to be sharing with you this brand new mute from Hirschman Mutes. This is the Chicago Stinger version 2. A little bit later, we will be hearing from Ed Hirschman and Kenny Rampton, the two gentlemen that developed this mute, and we're going to hear all about the development and the process of creating this mute, some really interesting information, and then I will be demonstrating this mute so that you can really hear what it is all about. A very big thanks to Ed Hirschman and Kenny Rampton for sending me this advanced mute. It is on pre-order right now. It'll be shipping in a couple weeks. So the Buzz Mute, many of you probably don't have one, and many of you have probably never heard a Buzz Mute before because it is a very unique sound, very niche, and not many companies over the years have even made Buzz Mutes. They were pretty popular in the 1920s, the 1930s. A number of companies were coming out with mutes with basically kazoos built into them, or they have the kazoo filament, and basically what it does is you get a combination of the trumpet sound and then this kazoo type buzz, and it is a very unique sound. Now, many of the old Buzz Mutes, a lot of problems with them. They were very out of tune, the buzz wasn't even, the buzz filament would break very easily, and also the biggest one is they just didn't make that many of them, and they are very, very hard to find. And that is why this Buzz Mute came to be. So let's look at this mute up close and personal, and you'll see the common theme with so many mutes these days is 3D printing. And check out the bottom of that mute. You can see there are actually three little filaments in there for buzzing. And let's see if we can get close up on that label. And now let's check out this cork configuration, all right? You see how it is cut there? And if we twist it around and go to the other side, you'll see it is also has a very unique shape. Now, you saw on the bottom here, and I mentioned earlier about the kazoos. Well, if you unscrew one of these caps on the bottom, so these are just little caps that go on the bottom of the mute, and it protects the little resonator that's inside there, this little kazoo membrane, and this mute has got three of them. And because of that, it has a very powerful buzz sound. Now, this mute also opens up in the middle. Now, it's not designed to be played open and separated, but it does come apart into two pieces, and check that out. You can see that this is basically, it's like a flat part with a whole bunch of holes, and that is helping to diffuse the air and the sound before it hits those three membranes that are on the inside. And that is just one of the innovations, one of the things that they had to figure out when they were putting this mute together. Now, this is a very well-built and sturdy mute, and as I mentioned, I had the opportunity to speak with Ed Hirschman and Kenny Rampton, who developed this mute. So let's jump to that interview and hear what they had to say about creating this mute and the process that they took, which led us to this mute.
Hi, Ed. Hi, Kenny. How are you doing? I'm so glad that you were able to join me for this video and to share a little insight with this fantastic new mute that you've got. So I've got to ask, I got to start off, why a Buzz Mute?
I think Kenny was having a gig at Club Dizzy, Coca-Cola in New York City. And there was one section that I was listening to. I'm like, wow, that's a really unique sound. I couldn't figure out what it was. And I said, Kenny, what are you doing to get that sound? And he said, I have this old mute that basically has a kazoo filter in it, and I get that sound. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I want to buy one. Where'd you get it? He said, you can't buy this mute. It was made in the 1920s, and they're not made anymore. So I was just really intrigued by this thing. So I decided to try to make one. And I went out and I got some materials, and I made one kind of on my own. And that was basically the Chicago Stinger Generation 1 mute, which we were selling a couple of years ago. And, we sold quite a few of them, but they were extremely labor intensive to make. So I had to stop making those.
And this is the original mute that Ed heard. I was playing at Dizzy's with my group. And it's a two-piece mute, all right? It's called the Chicago. And this is the inner mute. It's kind of the size of a small Pixie, and it's got a kazoo filter on the end. Goes inside the mute. And this is the plunger. It's a metal plunger with felt on the inside so it doesn't clang against the bell. And it's a two-piece mute called the Chicago. It's got a really cool sound, but the buzz is a little inconsistent, and it plays really out of tune, man. It's like horribly out of tune and really stuffy. But it gets a cool sound, so I just put up with it because I really like that sound for this particular piece that I wrote for a play, actually. So yeah, Ed heard that, and then he said, hey, what is that mute you're playing? And I told him about it. He said, can you send me a picture? So I took a picture, I texted it to him. He said, no, next to a ruler. So I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I took a picture next to a ruler and sent it to him. Next thing I know is Ed started making these. You know, the Chicago Stinger, the original, which it's basically, you know, it's a little different shape. You know, it's what he could find that was close to this. And so he made one and sent it to me. He asked what I thought, and I dug it. And man, you know, I've always loved buzz mutes. I'm a mute geek, man. What can I say? I always have been. And Winton actually wrote a piece, and there was a movement called Bees, Bees, Bees. The piece was called Spaces. And we were about to do a concert at Jazz Lincoln Center, and Winton was having us play with a mouthpiece or with Harmon to get these sounds. And I was like, Winton, try this. And he tried it and he loved it. He's like, oh man, can we get a set of these for the section? And so Ed had just started messing around with it. So he made us a set to use for the section, and he started developing it for trombone as well for this piece, Bees, Bees, Bees. And so that's kind of how this mute came to be.
You know, I bought a cardboard stone-lined mute off eBay for $9. I cut the end off, and that was the beginning of all the testing that we did.
Ed is like MacGyver, man. He gets things and he tears them apart and puts them back together different ways. And you know, his background, he's a great trumpet player, first of all. And I've known him. We played together in McDonald's All-American Jazz Band. But he went to school, I think, for mechanical engineering. He knows how to, you know, create things three-dimensionally in the computer, and he's got a mind for that. And he's just a brilliant cat on top of being a trumpet player, which is a rare combination. So we started messing around, and we started trying things and started looking at all the different elements in developing a mute like this that will make it good. You know, I mean, he came up with the vortex corking system, and we tried stuff on the inside of the mute. You know, this cap unscrews, you know, and, you know, on the inside it's got these holes here, and that's something we experimented with, all kinds of different shapes, different sizes of holes on the inside, which help create stability of sound, pitch, and also diffuses the air when it goes through here, so the air you're blowing through the horn doesn't blow out the filters. The corking system, we tried everything you could think of, different materials, the foam rubber kind of stuff, or the foam or whatever it is. We tried the standard, like a cup mute, 3 corks. We tried a straight line here versus the kind of crooked line we ended up with. And they all affect the pitch. They all affect the sound of the mute. They all affect the buzz, all these elements. There have been a lot of buzz mutes over the years, and most of them are not really that playable. They're not serious mutes. They don't play well in tune. They're really stuffy. They're novelties. In the development of this, I wanted it to be a serious mute, you know, and that's part of the reason, you know, I pushed Ed as much as I did, because I knew he had the know-how for us to be able to figure out how to do it and actually make it so it's a stable mute. Plays from the bottom of the horn, low F sharp. You know, I generally can't play above a high C, so I test it up to a high C. It plays really well in tune. It locks in just fine. It's got a good affected sound from the kazoo filters, the buzz effect, you know, and it's a serious mute. It's a real mute, and it feels good to play. It doesn't feel like it's choking you off, you know. It's just it blows freely. I'm really proud of this mute, actually more so than the plunger even, and we put a lot into the plunger as well. This one, you know, took even a little more thought to really come up with something that is playable and a really good mute. I hope that people start to check this out and really explore the sound. And it actually, and I'm not saying this just to push a product, but it actually sounds great with the plunger, with the our plunger. It's really a cool sound that you can really get some new colors out of. So I'm really excited about this, man.
You spent 8 months, you spent a good amount of time really kind of fine-tuning this mute. So you must have like a whole shelf, a whole box full of prototypes that you went through. Can you share like how many different iterations it took until you got to this ending point?
We must have done between 30 and 40 different prototypes, all different, with the corks and, this, he talks about the diffusion disc that we have, different resonators, the configuration, the caps. We spent probably a month just on those little caplets that you see. Once we started to kind of hone in on this design, like I said, everything was looked at in micro detail. We were always so surprised. So we said, well, if we do this change, this is what's going to happen. And most of the time, we were wrong. It was really experimentation that led the way. Our intuition was probably more off than on in terms of, being able to predict what a certain change would do. It was really quite eye-opening and quite humbling to see how little we actually knew. And we really let our ears lead the way in the development of this mute.
But I want Ed to talk a little bit about these resonators. Now, there's certain things that we're not going to give away all of our secrets. But when Ed was making this, we were getting our resonators from a company that makes them for kazoos, and those resonators, they're pretty poorly made. The material they're made with is not great. Now, there are different companies make different ones, and some of them buzz better than others, and we tried everything you could get your hands on.
So this was really the last piece of the puzzle. As we were going through different materials and looking at the sound and the volume and the durability, we've come up with something that really is making a difference in terms of the quality of sound and also the volume of sound. Kenny talked a lot about some of the nice qualities of this mute. There's two things that it really has going for it. One, it's actually loud. A lot of these buzz mutes are not loud. When you play this thing, it actually speaks. And Kenny was concerned that he was not going to be able to play it in a big band setting. And until we did some of this work on the resonators, I would have shared that concern. I think now with this mute, either as a soloist or as a section, it's going to cut. The other thing is, just with the way that we've configured these corks, which we call the vortex corking system, you're getting a lot of sound, but you're not getting a lot of raw trumpet sound. And that's a kind of a flaw, we've seen of some of these other mutes, is you're hearing a lot of raw trumpet. That's going to take away from the sound of the buzz mute. Now, if you try to close off that trumpet sound too much, then you get a stuffy out of tune mute. So really there are a lot of variables. And, I think Kenny said, we got more satisfaction out of working on this mute than on the plunger. There's just so many different aspects of this. It was much more of a challenge to build this mute versus a plunger.
All right. Well, this has been great. So much information, really so interesting to hear about how this mute was developed and the prototypes and the inspiration. And I think it's just awesome that we've got this new sound. It's kind of like discovering a new color. It's like, as a painter, it's like, oh, there's something new that we can do, right? New sound. So real excited about this. And I want to just thank you for taking the time and to be here to share with my audience.
Wow, a lot of information there, and it is always great to be able to talk with the makers of the mute to find out the real story behind it and how it came to be. So we've heard all about this mute, now let's hear how it sounds. All right, so you've just heard this brand new buzz mute, and what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to know what all of you thought about how this mute sounds. Personally, I've got to say, this mute is so much fun to play. It's got such a powerful buzz sound, and it is really unlike any other mute that I've got as far as the tonal character. And it plays very well with great response and intonation from a low F sharp all the way to a high C. Really everything that you're looking for in a mute. And such a cool sound, particularly as you play lower. To me, it almost sounds like a guitar with overdrive on it. It's got like so much buzz to it. It's got like so much edge to the sound. Very, very cool. And I'm going to be looking for opportunities to use this mute just because it is such a unique sound. Like I've said so many times, that is the greatest thing about trumpet mutes. It allows us to change the character of our sound and the quality of our sound. And think about it, there are not too many other instruments that have that ability, that have that luxury. You know, a piano, it's always going to sound like a piano unless it's a digital keyboard. A saxophone, they can't just change their sound on a whim. A flute, you know, clarinet, all these other instruments, they can't get as wide of a tonal palette as the trumpet because we can use mutes. And this mute has got such a strong buzz, such a unique sound. I would not be surprised if a lot of trumpeters out there picked one of these up and started using it and started writing new music for it just because it is such a different sound. And that is something that I just love with all these new mute manufacturers. They are innovating, they're coming up with new sounds, or they're taking old sounds and improving on them. And a big kudos to Ed Hirschman and Kenny Rampton for putting the time and energy in and really creating such a fantastic buzz mute. So I'm really excited about this, and thank you very much for sending it to me so that I could share it with everyone here on my channel. This is a very cool buzz mute, so I'm gonna start trying to incorporate this into something because it is such a fun sound. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it opened your ears up to some new sounds. If you did, let me know. Leave a comment, hit that like button, and most importantly, subscribe so you can catch all of my upcoming videos. I want to thank you for joining me and for spending some time with me, and I will see you in the next video.